Hey everyone, how are you doing? It's me, it's Kat. Hi. But anywho, okay, I am going to show you how I marbleize my tombstones. Okay, this is one tombstone here that I have done, and it comes in two pieces. It is a Wilton mold, and you can paint it any way you want, but this is how the tombstone looks. The spider glows in the dark, but I'm not going to paint all the detail. I'm just going to show you how to do this little bit of marbling and get that age goth effect that you're looking for. The colors that you'll need is it's like a pewter color. It's a gray, but it's like pewter or pewter gray. Black, English navy, an antique white, and bright yellow. Okay, I just put them down on the plate. I put them down on the plate, just little daubs. You don't need a lot for this. But first thing I do is I take my tombstone. This is the one that says 1960. I mean, sorry, I was going to say 1963. Woo! This one says 1916. And I just dab my brush into each one. And I also got a high gloss white. And what I do is I use scrap clay, because if I'm going to paint over my clay, I usually just grab the scrap clay and use it, because you're going to paint over it. So there's no sense in spending all your money on white clay. There's no sense in it. This is basically what they call a dry brush, because my brush is not wet. It's dry. The only wetness that you'll see is from the paint. And the tears when you make a mess and you have to start all over. And what I do is I just get a sponge, what most of you use to take and make your little squishies with, and then I just remove that layer. You see how it just removes off and it leaves the pigment behind of the gray? Okay, all that has been removed. You see? All done. Okay. See how that's done? Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit of my dark blue and my black with just a tad bit of the yellow. You see how that looks? And what I'm going to do is I usually use my arm to dry off my brush a little, and then I'm just going to come and just randomly go over what I've got and work it into some of the crevices, like the eyes. I'll work it into the eyes, and you can usually pick up some of the dry paint. See, I have put paint on my arm, and I use my arm as a paint palette. I don't know if your mom and dad will appreciate that, but I usually use my leg or my arm, or I use a towel once in a while on my pants and blue jeans just to get the dry brush effect on there. And as you can see, it's starting to look more weathered. And then once again, you're going to come in with your little sponge and you're going to wipe off, not hard, because you don't want to streak it. You want it to look aged. You're going to wipe that off. You want it to look like it's been sitting for years and years and years, like 100 years. So you're going to take it and get in there. And if there's a spot that you want to go over, just take your brush. It's still good with what paint you got on it. And get into that crack. No jokes from the peanut galleries about getting into cracks. Oh. Mainly my peanut gallery, which is me. Okay, there. That's how that is looking so far. You see? Now, you're going to come in. This is one of my old brushes. I always use my old brushes when I dry brush because I do not want to ruin them. So what I'm doing is I'm making the same texture I did over here, but I'm adding just a tad bit more yellow with a little bit of white to it because it's going to marbleize. And all these lines, come back, dry your brush off, and just take it and lightly go and take your finger and just smear it. You see? Wherever you see a little bit of a crevice or a crack, there you go. Just take your finger and go over it like that and just wipe it off very gently with your fingers. And do it again. And just repeat the step with all the little cracks that are on here. And if you want, and you don't want to use your finger, just take your sponge once again and don't do that, but get it in there and then touch up all the little cracks and it'll make them darker. It'll make those cracks stand out more, like this big long crack here. Just take your paintbrush and go down like that. You don't have to be perfect because with age, if you ever been to a an old cemetery, you'll see where all the stuff is aged off and it looks pretty old. And you're going to do the same thing for his head. You don't have to be perfectly neat and everything because it's weathered. And weathered stuff does not look perfect. It usually has, I hate to say it, bird droppings. I said bird droppings. But just take it, and there's no right or wrong to this technique. It's just, and you'll see how fast this can go. And I just got done doing my haunted house with this technique. I did the whole house with a wipe and the dry brush technique, and it's a wipe and brush, and it's sitting outside glazing. And this is part of my contest entry that I'm working on, so I just thought I'd share it with you. And yes, my haunted house is part of the entry too, so my haunted house looks really good. And for the lettering, use your dark blue because usually the lettering on tombstones stand out or they're engraved in, but for some reason this one is stand out. So I'm just going to take it and I'm just going to paint the outlines like this, and you'll see how fast this is going. And as soon as you're done painting that, come back with your sponge, lay it on there like that, and there you go. And another thing you might want to do is get your black paint, put a little black paint off to the side, get your smaller sponge like this, and what we're going to do is I'm drying my sponge out. I know most people would use a towel, but a true artist does not make apologies for their fingernails, their hands, and the paint and everything. A true artist will not do that. A true artist will tell you, I'm creative, and this is me in a nutshell. You know, because if you are neat, then I cannot be neat when I paint. I have to be a color of a rainbow because I believe in using everything to paint. And what I'm doing is this here with a little bit of white. Let's mix a little gray. Make a little gray on your hand like this. Dry that off a little bit and go over it. And what it does is it adds like a stone look to it. Basically, the sponges, it gets into places that you can't get into because it's bendable and pliable. And guess what? He's done. Oops, let me back him up. Back it up. And he is done. And that's my tombstone. And for the base, really fast, what I'll do for the base is, see, I didn't even put my sponge in water because it does not need to be wet until I clean it. A little bit of antique white, a little bit of gray, pewter gray, and paint that tombstone up. You don't have to worry about painting this part on the inside of this part because the tombstone's going to sit in there. It's a two-piece, and what it does is it just is a base. And you come in here, get your sponge once again, and you'll see. See? It turns it from that pretty white to that pretty gray. Now this is just a tombstone. There's really no decorations on it except for the bones. I will decorate the bones here in a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up a little bit of everything on our sponge here. Whoops, let me see. Okay, you see how I picked up a little bit of everything? Okay, we're going to dab it off, dry that off, pat it, pat it, pat it. Look at my arm. Okay, and then we're just going to go over this tombstone here. And I'll make those bones on the front pop here in a minute. And you're just going to pat that on there. You don't have to go slow. So anytime I tell everybody that knows me, if you see me and I've got paint on me, you know I've been working. Because I love throwing myself into my work. As where Ballistic Hay does computer graphics and stuff, she doesn't get as dirty as Mommy does. She's sitting in there grinning. She's in there doing her computer. She does a lot of deviant art work. And she does an awesome, awesome job. And she makes tails. And she's in the process of doing Lady Jarhead's tattoo. Designing her a tattoo, which she really needs to get to work on. I know, you got block. Okay. And for the bones, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them a little darker. I'm just going to come over with some paint and just, like I said, it's all aged. So you don't want it to be shiny and sparkly. It's supposed to be scary and creepy. And so I'm not even covering up the bones or painting the perfect bone on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my paintbrush and you'll see. There you go. And there's your bone. In a nutshell. There you go. And that's the base. And it's done. The whole thing is done and it took a matter of 14 minutes to paint. And me, I would not personally glaze these because, you know, tombstones aren't supposed to be shiny, glossy, glazy things after umpteenth years of sitting out in the sun and weather and being abused and used by people. So this is my tutorial on my little tombstone. I hope that you all like it. I got a little white right there, so we're just going to come in and fix that. There you go. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it was helpful for any of you that want to do a haunted, scary thing. Halloween is my time of year. I was born on the 28th, and for Halloween, that was when I was brought home from the hospital, and Halloween is my time. I really don't do any of the other holidays. Holidays is the bomb for me. Where else can you go to the house and beg for candy in disguise? Yay, candy! Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. So, you want to say anything, Red? Nah, she's going to be quiet. So, peace out and toodles! Happy crafting! Bye, everybody.